I was rinsing out the last of the detergent from my hoodie when I heard the door creak open. The laundromat was always empty on Tuesday mornings. Half the reason I came then. I liked the hum of the dryers, the smell of soap that clung to the air, the way nobody looked at me too long. But she stepped in like she'd always belonged there. Mrs. Harding, my landlady. Mid-40s, neat hair pulled into a loose knot, jacket folded over her arm like she didn't quite care whether it wrinkled. I'd seen her plenty in the hallway, her hand always on her keys, her voice polite but firm when reminding me about recycling bins or quiet hours. She had that way of making ordinary words feel heavier. "Morning," she said. I nodded, too quickly. "Yeah, morning." She carried her basket over to the machine beside mine, set it down with a soft thud. I washed her fingers, unpainted nails, a little dry around the knuckles, fuss with the coins. I told myself to look away, but I didn't. "You always pick the quiet times," she said, not looking at me yet. I smiled, folding my damp hoodie like it mattered. "Guess I don't like crowds." "Me neither." She gave a short laugh, almost to herself, and slid her clothes into the machine. It wasn't anything dramatic. No background music, no swelling moment. Just two people folding laundry. But I noticed the way her sleeve brushed the edge of my basket when she leaned past. The way her eyes flicked up, caught mine, then moved back down like maybe she'd stayed too long. The silence stretched. I pulled out my phone, stared at the screen. The last text thread was empty, just me typing, deleting, typing again. Nothing sent. My thumb hovered before I pocketed it. "You're a student, right?" she asked. I nodded. "Taking a break this semester, though. Working at the bookstore until I figure things out." "Bookstore?" She said it like she liked the word. "That suits you." I didn't know what she meant by that, but I wanted to. For a while, we just listened to the machines churn. I thought about saying something else, asking about her day, her job, anything. But every sentence felt too heavy in my throat. Instead, I folded napkins I didn't need to fold, creased them into smaller squares, stacked them, unstacked them. My hands needed somewhere to put the restlessness. When the dryers clicked off, she gathered her clothes with careful hands. She didn't rush, didn't stuff them in like most people did. She folded each piece, patient. I watched her do it, and maybe she noticed, because when she reached for her jacket, she glanced at me and held the look for just a second too long. "You'll get there," she said softly, like it wasn't about the laundry. I nodded, my throat tight. "Yeah, I hope so." She slung the jacket over her arm, turned toward the door. Then she stopped, like she'd remembered something. "You left your rent envelope on the counter last week," she said. Her tone was practical, but her eyes lingered, just for a breath. "I didn't want to bother you about it. But you can bring it by tonight, if that's easier." "Tonight," I repeated, clumsy. "Only if it's not," she started, but didn't finish. The door closed behind her with a quiet click. I stood there, holding a perfectly folded napkin I didn't need, wondering if she'd meant more than rent. I almost convinced myself she hadn't meant anything by it. Rent was rent, after all. But by the time I knocked on her door that night, envelope in hand, I could feel my pulse in my wrist. She opened quickly, like she'd been standing nearby. "Come in," she said, and stepped back. Her apartment smelled faintly of chamomile and something warm, ginger maybe. It was neater than mine, but lived in. Books stacked unevenly, a sweater draped over the back of the couch. A mug sat half full on the counter. "You want some tea?" she asked. I hesitated, then nodded. "Sure." She poured from the kettle into a chipped thermos cup, slid it toward me across the counter. No ceremony, but I noticed her hand lingered on the cup for a second before she let go. We sat at the small kitchen table. I turned the envelope in my hands until the edge started to curl. She noticed, but didn't comment. "You always pay on time," she said finally. "That's rare, these days." I laughed softly. "Guess I don't want to get locked out." She smiled, just enough for her eyes to crease. Then quieter. "I used to be married, you know." He never remembered the rent, even when we owned the place. Always thought someone else would handle it. I wasn't sure if I should respond. She stirred her tea, though it didn't need stirring. Sorry, she added. Didn't mean to. No, it's okay. I looked at her hand, the spoon tapping gently against porcelain. I didn't know. Divorced 8 years now. She gave a little shrug, like it was just weather. My son's about your age. That last part sat between us like a warning sign. I pressed my thumb against the paper of the envelope until it bent. She leaned back, studying me as if she hadn't meant to share that much. The silence stretched, but not empty. It hummed, like the space was suddenly charged. I thought about what people would say if they saw me sitting here, about how it would look, about her son, who I'd never met but suddenly felt guilty for existing alongside. And still, I couldn't stop watching the way her hair slipped loose from the knot, the way her sleeve brushed her wrist when she lifted her cup. I wondered what it would feel like to reach across the table and touch her hand. The thought itself felt dangerous. I don't know why that moment stayed with me. I'd think later. Maybe because it felt like someone finally saw me. Her gaze met mine, steady but unreadable. Then she pushed the rent envelope back toward me with one finger. You already gave me this. I frowned, confused. But keep it for now, she said softly. You'll need it more than I do. And before I could argue, her hand brushed mine as she slid it closer. Not a dramatic touch, not even deliberate maybe. Just skin against skin, warm enough to send a jolt up my arm. I didn't pull away. She didn't either. I started seeing her everywhere after that night. Not in a chasing way, more like she was stitched into my routine now. Passing in the stairwell, her mail left uncollected on the counter, the faint sound of her kettle through the thin wall. I told myself it was nothing, just proximity, but it never felt like nothing. One evening, I came back from work at the bookstore to find her sitting on the stoop, groceries at her feet. The bag had split open, oranges rolling across the concrete. Damn it, she muttered, reaching for them. I bent down before she could stop me. Got it. Our hands brushed as we both reached for the same orange. She froze first, her fingers curling back like she'd touched a wire. I kept mine wrapped around the fruit, too slow to hide what that moment did to me. Thanks, she said finally, pulling her bag closer. We carried the groceries inside together. Her apartment door was already open, the lights soft. I set the bag on her counter, tried to step back. But she held the doorway, almost like she wasn't sure she wanted me to leave yet. You always work late? She asked. Most nights. I shrugged. Keeps me busy. Busy's good. She opened a cupboard, slipped the oranges into a bowl. Better than empty. That word hung there, heavier than the fruit. I leaned against the counter, watching the way her hair slipped forward when she bent. My chest felt too tight. I wanted to say something, anything, but before I could, there was a knock at the door. Her body stiffened. Mom. A male voice. Deep, casual. Her son. She shot me a look, sharp, urgent. I didn't need telling twice. I moved into the kitchen, quiet as I could. She opened the door just enough. Didn't know you'd be by, she said lightly. Forgot my jacket last week. Thought I'd grab it. I stayed still, listening to their voices blur into small talk. My pulse wouldn't settle. When the door clicked shut again, she leaned against it for a second, eyes closed. Then she saw me. Neither of us spoke. I thought about how wrong it was, hiding in her kitchen like I didn't exist. How much easier it would be if I just left now. But my feet stayed. She moved closer, slow, until we were only a step apart. Her hand brushed her hair back, nervous. My eyes followed the movement, then slid down to her mouth before I could stop them. She noticed. For half a second, she didn't look away. The space between us felt breakable, like one small move would shatter it completely. My hand twitched, half reaching. Her breath caught, almost audible in the quiet. Then she stepped back, sudden, like she'd remembered something urgent. She turned to the counter, adjusting the oranges that didn't need adjusting. We should, she started, then stopped. I nodded, though I wasn't sure what I was agreeing to. We never touched. Not then, but it was closer than I should have let it be. It was late when I saw her outside, sitting alone on the bench by the mailbox. Streetlight cutting her profile in half, her jacket pulled close. I almost kept walking, told myself it wasn't my place. But my steps slowed anyway. Cold out, I said. She looked up, offered a small smile. Better than the noise inside. I sat down beside her, careful to leave just enough space. The wood felt damp through my jeans. For a while, neither of us spoke. A car passed, headlights sweeping across her hands folded tight in her lap. You okay? I asked finally. She exhaled through her nose. Long day. Then, after a pause, long month. I nodded, not pushing. My thumb traced the rough edge of the bench. She glanced sideways at me, eyes tired but sharp. You don't say much, do you? I shrugged. Don't want to say the wrong thing. Something flickered across her face. Sometimes silence says more than words. We both laughed a little, too quietly. But then her smile slipped, and she stared down the empty street. He's moving in with his girlfriend, she said suddenly. Your son. She nodded. I should be happy. I am really. Just makes this place quieter. Quieter than I thought I could stand. Her voice cracked just enough to hear it. I looked at her hands again, knuckles pale where she gripped herself too tightly. Sorry, she said, catching it. You didn't need to hear all that. It's fine, I said softly. I get it. And I meant it. More than I should have. For a moment, she leaned back, her shoulder almost brushing mine. That almost felt louder than anything else. I shouldn't be out here with you, she whispered, though she didn't move. I swallowed hard. Why? You're too young, too free. And I'm. She cut herself off, shaking her head. You don't need to carry someone else's loneliness. The words landed heavy. I stared at the sidewalk, heart pounding. I wanted to tell her she wasn't just loneliness to me, that she felt like the only thing real in weeks of drifting. But the words stayed stuck. Instead, I said, what if I don't mind? Her breath hitched. Silence. Just the hum of the streetlight, the faint rustle of leaves. Her hand shifted on the bench, closer to mine. Not touching, just close enough to feel the heat between. I turned, and she was already looking at me, eyes searching, conflicted, unguarded in a way I'd never seen before. It felt like the whole world had narrowed to that half-inch of air between us. Her lips parted, like she might say something, like she might close that space herself. But then she drew in a sharp breath, pulled her hand back into her lap, and looked away. The silence pressed harder than words could, and all I could think, staring at the ground, was the question I couldn't ask out loud. Did you want me to? The next morning, her blinds stayed closed. Usually I caught a glimpse, her shadow moving across the kitchen, the faint smell of coffee drifting into the hallway. But not that day, not the next either. I told myself it was nothing. People get busy. People close their doors. Still, the silence felt louder than usual, as if she'd taken something with her when she pulled away. At the bookstore, I kept checking my phone. No reason to. Really, she'd never texted before. But my thumb hovered over the screen anyway. Unlocking, locking, unlocking. I almost typed out something stupid, you okay? Or need anything from the shop. But the words looked wrong the second they lit up the screen. I deleted them before they could sting. 3 days later, I found her in the lobby. She was dressed sharper than usual. Dark coat, hair pinned neatly, makeup done in a way I hadn't seen before. She looked untouchable. Evening, I said, hesitant. She glanced up, polite smile that didn't reach her eyes. Hey, haven't seen you around. I stopped. I hadn't been anywhere. Working. Good, she said simply. Then the elevator dinged, and she stepped in without waiting for me. I stood there, staring at my reflection in the closed doors. Something was different. She'd built a wall in the space where we used to meet halfway. Later, I learned why. A neighbor mentioned seeing her with someone outside. Tall man, gray at the temples, carrying her grocery bags like it was the most natural thing in the world. I didn't ask questions, but the image stuck. Her hand brushing his arm. The quiet tilt of her head when she laughed. Back in my apartment, the air felt wrong. Too still. I poured a glass of water, didn't drink it. Sat down, stood up again. My mind looped on itself, rewriting every moment between us. Had I imagined the pull? Had I mistaken loneliness for invitation? I picked up my phone, opened a blank message. I missed, deleted it. Did I do something? Deleted that too. I ended up just staring at her contact, thumb frozen above send. I didn't feel heartbroken. I'd tell myself later. I felt paused, like life forgot to finish the sentence. That night, I walked past her door. The hallway light flickered once, then steadied. I thought about knocking, just 3 quiet taps, nothing more. Thought about how she might answer, or how she might not. I didn't. I stood there long enough for the moment to stretch thin, then walked back upstairs, my footsteps sounding too loud. Her door stayed closed, and for the first time, I felt like I didn't exist on her side of it at all. It happened on a Sunday evening. I'd gone down to collect a package, and there she was, leaning against the lobby wall, arms folded, waiting for something or someone. The air between us felt different, charged but tired. "You've been busy," I said before I could stop myself. She looked up slowly. "Not really." Silence. The kind that pressed on your chest. I shifted the box in my hands, wishing I'd said nothing, wishing I'd said more. Finally, she sighed. "We should probably talk." I nodded, throat dry. Her apartment smelled like it always did. Tea, fabric softener, but stepping inside felt heavier than usual. We sat at the table, the same one where I'd once folded napkins I didn't need. Neither of us touched the mugs between us. She started. "You've noticed me pulling back." I let out a laugh that wasn't funny. "Hard not to. I didn't mean to hurt you," she said, eyes fixed on the rim of her cup. I wasn't sure what I was doing, or what you thought I was doing." I stared at her hands, the way her fingers rubbed at the chipped glaze. My voice trailed. I swallowed, tried again. "I thought maybe you wanted me around." Her shoulders dropped, like she'd been bracing for it. I did. That silence again, only sharper, more exposed. "But you're too young," she added quickly, as if naming it would make it less true. "And she stopped. "I've already lived half a life. You shouldn't waste yours trying to fix mine." I shook my head, heat prickling at my skin. I wasn't trying to fix anything. I just liked being seen. "By you." Her eyes finally lifted, met mine. And for the first time, she didn't look away. The room felt too small, like it couldn't hold both of our truths at once. My pulse hammered at the edge of something I wanted to cross, something I knew I might regret. "I don't know what this is," I said quietly, "but it doesn't feel wrong. Not when it's just us sitting here." Her lips parted, but no words came. Only a small, shaky breath. Then, slowly, she reached across the table. Not dramatic, not bold, just her fingers brushing against the back of my hand, waiting for me to pull away. I didn't. Her touch was tentative, almost apologetic, but it was real. We sat like that, hands barely touching, until the weight in the room softened. She gave a small smile, the kind that looked like it cost her something. "Okay," she whispered. And it wasn't a promise, or a plan, or anything more than that. But it was enough to let the air finally settle. Time didn't rush anything. It never does. Weeks slipped into months, and whatever we had didn't explode or vanish. It settled, like dust in sunlight. We didn't name it. We didn't need to. Mornings found their rhythm. I'd leave for work at 8:47 a.m., passing her door just as she set her mug of tea down on the counter. Sometimes she'd open it a crack, lean against the frame with her hair loose, still damp from a shower. She'd ask if I'd remembered lunch. I'd joke that black coffee counted as food. She'd shake her head, hand me a sandwich wrapped in foil, pretending it wasn't anything special. Evenings were quieter. Not every night, but often enough. I'd find her on the bench by the mailbox. Some nights I'd sit beside her, the wood still damp from the day, and neither of us would speak much. Other nights, she'd tilt her head against my shoulder, soft, like it was the most natural thing in the world. Once, I asked if she ever missed how things were before. She thought about it, eyes following a car's headlights down the street. "I miss some things," she said. Then she looked at me, faint smile tugging at her lips. "But not enough to trade this." There were moments of doubt, of course. Glances from neighbors. Calls from her son she didn't always answer right away. My own friends asking why I'd been so busy, my excuses thin. But the weight of those things never quite outweighed the quiet comfort of her hand brushing mine across the table, or the way she remembered how I took my coffee before I remembered myself. One night, she admitted something. "I used to be afraid," she said, curling her fingers around her cup of tea, "that I'd spend the rest of my life waiting for someone to come back. Or worse, waiting for no one." I didn't answer right away. I reached over, adjusted the napkin she'd folded and refold like I used to. Then I said, "You don't have to wait anymore." She nodded, as if that was enough. And it was. Life wasn't perfect. Bills still came, laundry still piled, the world still turned. But somewhere in the middle of that ordinary rhythm, we found something steady. Not loud, not cinematic, just steady. And every time I caught her eyes across the kitchen table, or felt the brush of her hand against mine on the bench, I thought the same thing. This is ours. Not for everyone else. Not for show. Just for us. The kind of quiet truth you don't need to explain. The kind of love that feels like finishing a sentence no one else remembers starting. Did this story stay with you? What kind of quiet, real love stories do you want to hear next?